I'm gonna watch one of my other favorite YouTubers as of recently. Is Wendigoon. He's doing a report. It won't be that long, probably like 30 something minutes, 30 odd minutes of him explaining explaining unexplainable disappearance. I don't know why I put air quotes right now of missing 411. So that means people going missing. So basically, I just wanted to watch it, see what the fuck going on. There's some things I do know for myself, and then there's some things I don't know. So I want to understand like how far he's gonna get in it. It's only 38, 40 minutes, probably not that long. But he did say it was a series, so I think he has somebody help with it too. So I'm not trying to monetize on whatever he got going on. I just want to react to it. This is my what the shit at? What that shit at? You see the little patch with the Haitian flag on his forehead? I don't know if you can see, it's a bandana. That's me. I have a YouTube channel that I don't surely use. I'm sorry. It's called D Not Listed Nerd, even though I changed my name I rebranded as Incognito, because whatever. I guess, because I feel like the D Not Listed Nerd wouldn't pick up that easily as Incognito or Incarnibro or something like that. So, but yeah, that is it. It's called my actual full name, which I don't care if people know. Is whatever the fuck. You see my face. Like, if KS can come on console, Kevin Samuel on YouTube, I can call myself John Thalange. I'm John Thalange. But yeah, let's explain some missing cases. I guess if he can explain to the best of his ability, honestly, he may not know something that I don't know. So who knows?
His channel, The Lore Lodge, or the podcast that him
so I did
together,
really
the
loud.
Bible Podcast, it will be the second link in
my
the description
headphones.
just below the ad. In future videos, I want to group together cases that have some common ground and maybe theorize on what that could mean.
Yep.
But for now, again, this is mostly an introduction. I want to go through some of the ones that I find the most terrifying. As a matter of fact, Adrian and I would both like to do that, so I'll let him have the first.
Unfortunately, some of these might include a lot of children, because a lot of kids do go missing, and then they get found. This is the guy that got the help.
No explanation for how it is that they got there, and a case that exemplifies that is that of Bobby Bizup. Bobby went missing in Rocky Mountain National Park. He was at camp. It was a Catholic boys' camp, and all that
I don't know who's
discovered is
Technoblade.
he was fishing in a local stream, and then the counselors called everybody back.
What was good,
food.
Ken?
One counselor saw Bobby Bizup.
Ken Pika? I can't even say your name, man. I'm sorry. I'm gonna just call you Con Pika.
He realized Bobby was nowhere to be seen.
That's Pika or Piki. I'm gonna call you Piki.
They launched a search, and they could not find Bobby anywhere.
That's probably
until
better.
Eventually, they found him several miles away,
Your name
much
is hard.
higher up on the mountain, and all they found of him was his hearing aids, his some of his clothes, and fragments of his skeleton. They didn't find anything other than that.
While it's very common for no remains to be found in a 411 case, sometimes when they are found, the case becomes all the more bizarre.
Right.
An example of that is the instance of Charles McCuller. In 1974, an 18-year-old Charles McCuller was known for taking hiking trips throughout the northwest United States.
Did that guy look 18 to you guys? Because he showed it to me, but let's keep going.
About a year, Charles would hike out to these remote locations, take several wildlife
that was like a 37-year-old man, but whatever.
Pictures, and then work his way back. He was rather
no disrespect to the dead.
Experienced, as is common with several 411 cases, and it wasn't uncommon for him to spend a few days by himself in the mountains before returning to civilization. So in 1975, when a 19-year-old Charles told his friends that he was going to hike to the Crater Lake National Park in Oregon, they didn't think much of it. That was until Charles didn't return for 3 days when he was only supposed to be gone for 2. So his friends called the police, and an investigation soon followed. After performing an investigation, it seems the last person to see him alive was a park ranger who gave him a ride on January the 30th. That park ranger dropped Charles off at the trail he intended to follow. Some reports from that day say that Charles was spotted up to a 45-minute drive away just walking along the side of the road, and some other reports say that they saw someone matching Charles' description trudging through 5 feet of snow. However, the only one that can be confirmed is again that park ranger's testimony of taking him to the trailhead. A massive search was mounted for Charles, however it was made difficult to do any searching because of 12 feet of snow recently left by a snowstorm. Not only that, but after the case began, for some reason, the FBI became involved. The FBI only involves himself with cases if a kidnapping or foul play is suspected.
Yeah.
However, at this time in the investigation, it was just a guy who took too long to be on a hiking trip. To this day, it's not really explained why.
That's why you don't go hiking by yourself. Like,
especially because
I'm sorry. I know now a lot of people want to go hiking because modern day 2022, a lot of people can't even survive going on a hike. Trust me, that shit is kind of strenuous. If you're not used to it. I've been on a hiking trip once before, and I can tell you, I actually almost broke my fucking ankles. I didn't. But it's the fact that I was ill prepared. I wore sandals, yeah, my dumb ass, on a fucking hilly, like, sandy area in Georgia, where I think it was slides I was wearing, and I misstepped on a rock and almost fucked up. Like it was a path I seen people taking, and I'm like, you know what? Instead of me going all the way around just to get down here, let me just take that exit. It's like a rock, maybe like I say maybe 5 feet, 6 feet down, but the rocks were very slippery. I didn't peep that, and I like misstep on the rock, and I came tumbling down. Luckily, somebody caught me that already went before me, that I didn't just fucking clack my ankles, bro. That shit was fucking wild. But yeah, hiking, don't go hiking by yourself, bro. Like, not at all. You fuck up on a hiking trip by yourself, you gonna go missing and probably die. Like, you're injured, you probably broke your arm or your leg, and you by yourself in the woods. Fuck, my nigga, you gone. Yeah, you don't have like survivor instincts, which I was like maybe a few things. Or even then, certain things are against you, like animals or just hypothermia, or you not getting enough food, or you getting like, I don't know, just not be able to get where you get at in the time span. You get dehydrated. Who knows what the fuck happened to you? But honestly, I believe there's strange things that happen in the forest, and even like off other places where people can't explain shit. So these are reasons why we're watching this nigga.
Evidence was that there was no evidence the guy had disappeared without a trace. For months, nothing could be found, and even after all the snow had melted, there was still no evidence of Charles being anywhere. That was until October the 1st of 1976, nearly 2 years since his disappearance. On that day, 2 hikers found a backpack lying in the woods about 12 miles from the spot where Charles was originally dropped off. Within the backpack, the 2 hikers found keys to a Volkswagen, which after they gave it to the police, was a match to Charles' vehicle. So now that there was a lead, a search began at the location the backpack was found. And shortly thereafter, Charles' remains were discovered in the nearby Bybee Creek. And from there is where it gets weird. Charles' jeans were found sitting upright on a log with no other articles of clothing lying around it. Obviously, Charles hadn't gone hiking into the woods bare-chested just wearing his blue jeans, so his coat, shirt, and other undergarments were nowhere to be found. The only other article of clothing that was there was Charles' socks, which were tucked into the bottom of the jeans' pants legs. The jeans also had the belt and buttons undone, implying that whoever took them off had done so voluntarily. Upon investigation, remember the 2 socks I mentioned being in the pants legs of the jeans? Well, the socks contained various feet bones, and inside of the jeans were snapped shin bones. And then located in a pile about 12 feet away from the log were the skeletal remains of Charles McCuller. Due to the weathering and effects of nature, everything was dismantled and fragmented. However, enough of a dental record could be made to confirm his identity. However, despite finding his bodily remains, nothing else was located. None of his equipment, his boots, or any other articles of clothing were ever found. Even more bizarre is that the location this was found is an insanely remote part off the trail. Meaning that if Charles was lost and then trying to find his way through the snow, there would be no reason for him to essentially scale an icy mountainside, only to put himself in a more remote and dangerous location. Keep in mind, at the time he went missing, everything was covered in several feet of snow as well.
Yeah, that's crazy. He's treading through snow. He probably just died of hypothermia.
To go look back during the original search. However, they couldn't get any men or snowmobiles up there, so they figured reasonably there's no way Charles could have got up there. So what force compelled Charles to climb to his final resting place? And perhaps more importantly, what force put him there? There are cases of what's called paradoxical undressing, or whenever someone gets extremely hot or extremely cold, they take off their clothes in a state of delirium. And while that would make sense for Charles in this case, Why were his feet and legs still within his clothing? Or part of his legs still inside of his clothing? And then you have questions about where the boots went and why the top part of his body was separated from some of the parts of the lower part of his body.
Yeah, that made no
sense. If you were to
sense.
say an animal came and caused the disfigurement that the rescuers would later find, then how were the jeans still undone, upright, sitting on a log as if nothing bad had happened? It's a mystery to this day and one of the cases that make the 411 so compelling.
My boy probably tried to eat his own feet. Many of these cases involve
young children, and it's not...
He probably tried to eat his own feet. He was going crazy. Who knows what was going on in his mind before he died, and then animals probably took part of that too. And it's been like a while since they found his body, so I'm just speculating that maybe, because he doesn't know for sure, he just find it weird, but I speculate that the nigga probably just harmed himself and then died. But then like maybe animals like coming out of hibernation, coming out the snow, they're like, oh shit, there's some free food right here. But they said his pants and stuff was unbuckled, so I don't know what was going on. I felt like Cole was just dying because he was going crazy, he's being delirious, and he was gonna die regardless because they say he was in a really unremote part of that trail. So that means like nobody was gonna find him, and if he couldn't find his way back, he was dead anyways. Unless you just live off the land, which is wild. What the fuck was out there anyways?
They're young children that makes it odd. It's that they're young children who are then found in places they really shouldn't be. One example of this is Keith Parkin.
Some of these people are found alive. I'm not saying all of them are dead.
Now, Ritter
they don't know why they died. I mean, not died, but went missing, or they asked these people what happened. These people won't know.
Keith was out playing with his brothers on his family's cattle ranch. Eventually, when they got called in for lunch, they noticed that he was missing. So they launched a search for him. A few hours later, 4 miles away, they found footprints, and then they had to follow those footprints for another several hours before eventually the next day they found him face down on the ground, covered in scratches, alive, 12 miles from where he went missing.
Oh,
his
wow.
explanation for the scratches was that a cat scratched him, but he had no explanation for how he covered 12 miles in less than 24 hours. And of course, you know, people wanted to see, is that even possible?
Yeah.
So Les Stroud from Survivor Man tried to do the exact same hike, tried to cover the same distance, and he could not do it. So
not
to be
that
clear,
time.
I want to really drive that point home. A guy whose job is that they drop him in difficult terrain, and all he does is try and make his way to the extraction zone. He couldn't do this. So the idea that a 2-year-old feasibly could cover 12 miles of rough country in less than a day,
bruh,
it's just straight up impossible.
Yeah, that's wild.
That aren't necessarily just forests. Well, one of the profile points is swamps. And a case that had quite a few people baffled is the case of Rowan Grifton, who went missing in a swamp in 2010. Rowan was 2 years old, and he was at a family party at his grandmother's house, which is directly across the street from Barden State Wildlife Management Area. Now, that's not a national forest, but it is a state wildlife management area. New York is weird about their wildlife management areas. When we were doing our investigation on Tom Messick, the State Game Service would not speak to us. Rowan was playing with a cat, and then the cat ran off into the woods. Rowan chased the cat, and was eventually discovered to be missing. They launched an immediate search of the area, and then when they couldn't find him, they called in help from the authorities. They searched for the rest of the afternoon before deciding to close down the search for the night, because it just wasn't safe and they weren't going to make any progress.
Yeah.
So, the next day, when they went out searching again, they did actually find him pretty quickly because they called out for him, and he called back. But he was not found by the initial search group. He was found by a splinter group that decided to go check out a swampy area 3 miles away. All Rowan could tell people when they found him clinging to a tree in the center of a pond in the swamp that this 2-year-old boy could not have possibly swam to. Oh, and by the way, he was dry. All he could tell them was that he was scared of the cows, and the cows drove him out to this tree.
What?
There were no cows in the area. Rowan could give no other explanation of how he got there, and as I said, there weren't any cows.
One of the more interesting details, at least to me, about...
Hold up, bro. That's wild. That is wild. He was completely dry. I doubt he hanged on for enough for him to get dry. If you can't swim through a swamp and hang on something to dry up that quickly. So what the fuck was going on with that? I'm gonna be back. That's something. Milo, yo, don't ever go missing, bro. Because I don't got a chip yet for you.
Mic off. Mic on.
What I'm gonna do is let it play, because I'm doing something right now. But I can stay here and I'll reply.
About 411 cases
Mic
is how
off.
they often happen to people who are incredibly prepared for whatever's happening. And it creates a near state of panic that if this could happen to them, then it could happen to anyone. And for an example of that, look no further than Aaron Hedges. Aaron frequently hiked a mountain range ominously known as the Crazies, located in the northern Rocky Mountain range of Montana. On September 3rd of 2014, a 38-year-old Aaron went out on a hunting trip with two of his friends. Him and his friends did this all the time. They would go out on horseback, bring all their gear on a pack mule, and then camp out for several days as they hunt big game. As a matter of fact, they were so experienced at doing this that Aaron and his friends had mapped out several of the trail routes on their own and even set up these small waypoints that had supplies and camping gear in case they needed any on their trip. So if you're confident enough in your hiking abilities that you'll leave thousands of dollars of gear in the middle of safe houses that you built dozens of miles up mountainsides, you're probably pretty good at it. While moving up the mountain on September the 5th, the mule that was carrying everyone's gear became spooked, and whenever it jumped, it caused Aaron's sleeping bag to fall off its back and down the mountainside. Now, it gets very cold in the Rockies at night, however, this wasn't a problem because, as mentioned earlier, they had waypoints set up with spare supplies. So on September the 5th, Aaron began to travel by himself to one of the waypoints a few miles down the
Mic
trail.
on.
I understand you're comfortable with the trail, but why go by yourself? I would never ever be comfortable going in a big ass forest by myself. If something happens to me, I can't know what's going on. I don't have nobody there to help me. Niggas be like going to the forest by themselves. I'm Gucci. I'm not doing that. Shit, my nigga, I won't go a lot of places by myself. So why would I go to the woods by myself?
This was towards a location known as Sunlight Lake. I cannot stress this enough, this was a trail that Aaron was very familiar with. He had built several permanent camping sites on it and left the group with a GPS, a walkie-talkie, a cell phone, a bow and arrow, and a gun. He began to walk away from the two others, saying that he would be back by nightfall, and Aaron was never seen again. Whenever Aaron didn't show up that night, the two didn't think that it was a big deal. They just figured he probably stayed in the safe house for the night. However, when
Mic on.
I had to finish my pork for this, but not trying to be racist, even though that it might sound racist. Why do white people in the most peculiar situations decide to split up? He did come with people. He just left by himself. Nigga, why? Why? Why did you leave by yourself? Always bring a buddy with you, bro. Anywhere you go, bro. Two is better than one. This nigga had two other people, I think, with him and went by himself. He could at least went with one. You know, one person staying where they at. He could have went with the other person. Come on, man. Wildin'. I'm sorry, bro, but y'all people need to stop doing that shit. But gang, let's split up like fucking Fred. Like, no, nigga, we're in the middle of a forest. No matter what, that's still not a good idea. And they hunt game over there. Who knows what might be there? A cougar, a fucking bear, something else. Who knows? Probably something more dangerous, probably. Who knows?
there was no word from him the next day, they began to panic. Especially whenever they go to check his location on the GPS, because the day previous they weren't able to get the GPS to show his location, and whenever the location did pop up, he was miles and miles away, completely off the map from the selected trail area. So the two come off the mountain and alert Aaron's wife, who then alerts the police, and a search begins on September the 8th. The first day, they looked with the whole 9 yards. They had infrared cameras, they had about 20 dog teams scoping out the entire mountain, and helicopters flying everywhere trying to find Aaron. However, nothing was found the first day. But on the second day, something was found that raised more questions than it did answers. On the second day, while walking to the location to begin the search for that day, search crews stumbled across what seemed to be a makeshift campfire where it seems someone had tried to start a fire with a pack of cigarettes. Nearby this makeshift campfire was an empty water bladder, a pair of straps for a waistband for a hiking backpack, and a pair of boots, all of which belonged to Aaron. The boots were lying side by side, neatly standing up, as if someone had calmly taken them off and placed them next to the fire. But then, in the middle of the Montana cold, decided to not put them back on. And once again, this was in a location that wasn't even being searched because it had been completely searched the day before. Not only that, but it was further down the mountain than the location where Aaron would have gone missing. So for all this to have worked out, Aaron would have had to walk one direction for several miles for his GPS location to show up, walk the other way but then miss the group who was looking for him, and then attempt to start a fire one night in a location that was searched shortly thereafter, only to then take off his boots and try to walk through the cold barefoot? Not to mention the dog teams that were running around the entire place and can never pick up a scent. So despite this, which should have been a great break in the case, nothing else was found. At least, nothing was found for 9 months. Until in June of 2015, a hiker discovered the backpack of Aaron Hedges. Inside of this backpack, the hiker discovered a cell phone, a hunting vest, extra clothes, a hunting license, and several granola bar wrappers, all of which belonging to Aaron Hedges. However, a short distance from that backpack, and potentially the weirdest development of the whole case, the hiker found sitting on top of a rock a thermos and an open energy drink. The family later saying that this thermos belonged to Aaron. This location was on top of the mountain that not only had a very clear view of the ranch beneath, but also of a major roadway right in front of the ranch. And it seems that when Aaron was drinking from that thermos and the energy drink, he was just sitting on the rock watching the road and the farm in front of him. And despite another massive investigation from the spot that this gear was found, no remains were located. That was until 1 year later when the skeletal remains of Aaron Hedges were finally discovered. They were lying about half a mile down the hillside from the location where his gear was found the year prior. This was about 6 miles from where the makeshift campfire and boots were discovered, and about 15 miles from the last place where his friends saw him. And to make it even more bizarre, the remains were found a few hundred feet from the road and the ranch. And just in case you thought we'd get any answers, there were no cause of death determined from the bones that were found. There was no trauma on any of the bones or any indications of an injury that could have led to his death. For all we know, he simply died there with no earthly explanation. So think about this case. An experienced hiker begins to walk to a location that he's incredibly familiar with. However, he walks the completely wrong direction and then comes back in the wrong direction before he decides to take his boots off, walk another 6 miles to a mountaintop where he calmly sits down and has a coffee and energy drink before he leaves his backpack. And it seems that he was not only energized from the drinks, but also the granola wrappers he was eating, walks half a mile, and dies right before he hits the road. A lot of people online say that he passed into a different dimension, which, sure, I've got nothing better.
No cap. I was thinking that shit too. He's not lying. I said that nigga's probably on a different plane of existence than we were, and we can't explain what happened to him. He probably stepped into a part of the fucking dimension in the forest that nobody knew, that he didn't even know for some reason. So they were searching the area they say he was in, but they couldn't find him, even though they found his stuff. It's like the Cloverfield paradox, bro. That shit's wild. But yeah, I'm about to say the same shit too. I'm actually, excuse me. I'm actually on the. I feel like he probably just passed into another dimension, bro. That boy Kamui himself, and something happened.
It's a story that really makes you ask, what happens in the woods when we're not looking?
Some other cases I want to mention that they didn't really exemplify any of these individual profile points, but I thought that they were interesting, were those of Maurice Doc Demetz, who went missing while topaz hunting in Pike National Forest. He was there with his friend, and this is another case where this was a person who was physically disabled. He had a very time walking on his own. He was, I believe, 82 years old, so there just wasn't any way that he was really going anywhere fast. His friend, after a few hours, went to check on him because they were just topaz hunting 50 yards from each other, and he checked on him a few times, but the last time he went to check, Maurice wasn't there anymore, and nobody at all could find him. There's no way this guy wandered off on his own, and they determined there was no motive for the guy who was with him to have killed him. So, very strange case. There's the case of Eric Lewis, who went missing
Probably
while
walked off
hiking,
and died somewhere.
particularly climbing Mount Rainier.
Better never
They
find
were
his
ice
body.
climbing. He and his two friends, they noticed that they hadn't heard anything from him in a while, and when they pulled on the rope that would have gone down to him, it was slack. Eric seemingly just disappeared off the side of the mountain. He had unhooked his carabiner, and that was the last thing anybody could figure out that he had actually done. His clothes and gear were found in a small ice cave a little bit down the mountain, and that was it. That was
Nobody
the end.
found.
They could not find him.
Cut dead.
And the ice cave either did not go back far enough or was not navigable enough for them to look into it. There's also the case of Paul LeMay, who went missing on Mount Marathon. Now, Mount Marathon is, of course, in Kenai Fjords National Park. So,
Damn.
He was running the Mount Marathon race. He was the last person to be running the race. He was seen very close to the finish line by the crew who were packing up. He decided he wanted to make it all the way and then come back down, and he was never seen. They searched all over the mountain, every side, and there was no evidence that he had ever left the peak. Finally, the case of Bart Schleier, who went missing in Reed's Lake in the Yukon Territory. This was not in a national park or national forest, but it was in an extremely isolated area that you actually had to fly to. He was brought in via an amphibious plane, and then when the pilot returned to pick him up at the scheduled time, Bart was not there. There was no sign that he had actually been hurt or attacked while he was there, but he just disappeared. His food was still all packed up at the campsite. There was a bag that had an impression on it that made it look like somebody might have been sitting on it, leaning back, maybe waiting for game to come along.
Makes sense.
And of course, Bart was a world-class hunter. This is a guy who would track and tag Siberian tigers. And, I mean, the idea that a bear in the Yukon would catch him off guard enough to kill him without any sign of struggle just doesn't make sense. On top of that, if it were a bear, a mountain lion, a pack of wolves...
He's underestimating a powerful bear. A bear could knock your head off, like, with one hit. Like, that ass. I was a really big bear and just ate him entirely. And bears do actually stash bodies later, like in bushes and stuff, so they could come back to it, eat it. They can't eat the whole thing. And since he was a big dude, that don't mean he can not get one-shotted by a bear. So, I don't know. I feel like he may have probably gotten killed by a bear. They, but oh, he fights tigers. I'm like, yeah, but bears are bigger than tigers. And even though tigers do kill and eat bears too, or just the one Siberian tiger, it doesn't mean like a man could fight off a whole ass bear even if he think he could. Cause in his mind, he's like, oh, I fought a tiger before, but this is a fucking real ass 1,000-pound bear. Who knows? And just knock his head off, or did something and ate him. Cause bears start. And one thing people don't realize about bears, if you ever get attacked by a bear, they say to cover your neck and your head and your stomach, probably roll to your sides, because bears actually do start eating before you even dead. So by the time they sink their teeth in you, you're already in a process of being eaten. So you're not even like, they're trying to kill you first, then eat your body. No, they're trying to eat you right away. Like, even a crocodile will have to drown you first if it catches you. If it doesn't, like, straight one-shot you, like, bite you in your head and you just die instantly. But if you get caught by a croc, it's going to try to drown you first. And even then, it probably won't eat you. It'll probably stash you. But a bear will start eating first, then it'll stash you way later. Because this is how they are.
Anything like that, they probably would have also gone for the food that was left at his campsite. Since that was untouched, it seems very unlikely that he was a victim of animal predation. So that just about covers all the profile points and a number of cases that exemplify them. Once again, I'm Aiden Mattis of the Lore Log.
And that don't mean he couldn't get chased by a bear. I don't mean just because the food was left over there, he's a bigger meal. That's like saying, oh, yeah. It's like saying like something's grazing, like an animal is grazing for like berries and fruit, and then the bear start chasing it. There's berries and fruit still there, but that thing ran a mile away. It eventually found it and killed. Bears would chase things for a hot minute, and they run really fast. Cutbird just got killed by a bear and took it off somewhere. To be honest, it turned to bear poop. But people do go missing for crazy shit. I'm not trying to discount if anything happened, but some of them can be like, all right, if anything, unless it's like there's no bears in that area, there's no like big predators, like oh yeah, there's normally like no big predators here, then I could be like, okay, that's some other stuff. But they're like, yeah, a bear could have done it, but since the bear didn't do this, we can't say it was a bear. I'm like, bruh. A bear could do a lot of shit that you won't know they can do. Like motherfuckers can open doors and all that crap and associate you with food. So if anything, probably wouldn't even worry about the food. It's like, let me get this nigga real quick. So
You can find us here on YouTube, and I'll toss it back to Isaiah to go over some more details.
give this man, his name is Isaiah, but I can see it now.
Are entirely unexplainable, not only because of the condition in which remains or some evidence was eventually found, but just in the way that the entire thing kicked off. And I want to end this set of stories with one such case, that case being of Garrett Bardsley. On August the 20th of 2004, Garrett was out with his father on a Boy Scouts camping trip. Garrett was 12 years old and was out with his father and Boy Scout troop on a weekend getaway. This was in the Uinta Mountains of Utah at a place known as Cubert One Lake. Now, in several of the cases that Aiden and I have talked about up until this point, it involves an experienced person going into an uncharted realm of nature or someone getting trapped in the harsh elements. However, this situation was neither of those things. The location where Garrett and his father were camping was essentially a sort of park. There were several lots that were set up where groups could come and pitch a few tents and have access to hiking trails and lakes to fish in, and everything was very close and very easy going. Again, it was a common space to bring out campers so that they can have their first Boy Scout camping trip. All the trails were cut out and very clearly marked to the point it was essentially a sidewalk. And on top of all of that, Garrett had his wilderness survival training. So if anything did happen out here, it should essentially be a cakewalk. Garrett and his father walked to the lake that was just downhill from their camping spot. While they were fishing, Garrett slipped and fell into the water, soaking his pants and shoes. Garrett decided to walk back to the tent so that he could change, and then he told his father he would come back down in just a minute to continue fishing. His father didn't think anything of it, because not only, as I mentioned, were the trails clearly marked and it was all a very easy path to walk on, but the campsite was about 200 feet away from where they were currently fishing. If it wasn't for a little bit of tree cover, you could have a straight line of sight from the side of the bank to the campsite. The dad, being overly cautious, even directed his son as his son was walking away to stay on the marked path and followed him with his eyes until he got up to the tree line. Meaning at the last point Garrett was seen, he could have been within like 50 feet of the tent. So Garrett's dad continued fishing, but after about 20 minutes, he thought it was odd that Garrett hadn't come back to join him. So his dad comes up to the campground to check, and it turns out that Garrett never made it back to the camp. And as a matter of fact, Garrett was never seen again, remains or otherwise. It seems in just a few brief seconds even, that Garrett was walking through the tree line, something took him off the trail. Either his own curiosity, or something in the woods, or something by force got him to leave the clear path he was following. A massive
and then never found him again.
The only evidence of Garrett that was ever found was about half a mile off the trail in a granite boulder patch. One of his wet socks was discovered, simply lying there crumbled up in a massive field of rocks. Even from the location where the sock was found, the main road was a quarter mile away, and there were so many campsites and roads all around the area, it's almost as if Garrett, or whatever had Garrett, was purposefully avoiding people. And despite efforts from search and rescue, dog teams, and horseback riders searching the area, nothing was ever found.
I think he got kidnapped. It wasn't the animal that took him, which he would have been screaming if he was being bitten or carried away, but I think he got kidnapped. I think he got kidnapped by somebody.
Not even the fishing pole that Garrett took with him. And to this day, nothing more is known of what happened to Garrett Bardsley, save for one lonely sock. With several of these 411 cases, it boggles the mind to even try to come up with some explanation.
Sometimes,
of course, that doesn't mean everything that's labeled as a 411 case is completely unexplainable. A point could be made for several of these cases that it was just someone out hiking who got too far in over their head. or someone who just got lost and then nature does what nature does.
Does.
However, that doesn't explain some of the weird circumstances or some of the gear found or how the remains were uncovered. Another theory is that people say it could be a serial killer or the police covering up for some murder they don't want on the public record. But even then, in a lot of these cases, like that of Aaron Hedges, even if he was killed, then how did that person leave all the gear, evade search and rescue team, and get the remains in the places they were found? People tie a lot of these theories into government conspiracies and say that it all relates back to MK Ultra. With a lot of these stories, people say that maybe the government has these top secret facilities set up in the middle of the woods, and if anyone finds evidence of it, they're wiped out and their body made.
No cap, no cap, no lie. That's a possible thing too. You might stumble on some shit you're not supposed to see, and unfortunately, you cannot be let go. Your body can be killed and completely disintegrated with like acid. That's already something that's viable. The mafia does it all the time. They want no trace of you. They'll literally cut you up and throw you in a vat of acid. And they could say, oh well, you left blood here, or you was here one day, now you're gone. They have access to that. Mafia, some capacity, work with the government, if not on the same side of the coin, flip upside down. It's like, what the fuck? So that is a thing too. And he did recently cover a story about two boys. I'm sorry, Twitch, that were messed up or like not that were unalive, that had a conspiracy leading back to government officials and police officers trying to cover up something they were doing. So who knows what was going on? I personally believe Cut just got kidnapped by somebody who knew the trail already, who've been there. There can be serial killers that do hang out at spots where people is always at and are watching too. There are creepy people. There are people who like, they have people who've been like in parks, who like regularly go to parks, so they know the ins and outs of a park, so they know where to avoid, where most people are at, or know the time of day to go, because they are always there, and they have killed people in those things until they either let themselves be found or they got caught. So that is a plausible thing. So some of these people, the other cases, but when it comes down to the kids, out of the kids, I feel like the kids wander off, or like somebody took them. That's it. Or even an animal could take them, because animals can actually do shit like that too. Like actually scoop up your jit. Like a mountain lion could scoop up your kid and eat them later or something like that.
To look like a mystery. And while that sounds crazy, with some of the stories you've probably heard today and will hear in the future, it's probably the most plausible. Perhaps some of the most interesting stories to me are stories of delirium and paranoia that sets in.
That's
because
true.
While we can wrap our head around that in a physical sense, we understand that people can essentially go crazy. It's the things that made them go crazy and the reason for it that I find to be so enthralling. Because what power does the forest hold to drive a mind mad in such a small amount of time? Of course, several of the cases could be written off as the effects of a wild animal attacking someone or either discarding their pieces across a large distance, but that doesn't answer questions like the bones of Charles being found in his own socks. But then again, at that point, what does? If it's not a creature we know exists, what of one that we don't know exists? Whenever I hear about these stories, I often think about a lot of the ancient legends that have to do with the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains.
That too, like all those Native American stories aren't for no reason. That this is their original land, so who knows what was going on still and are going on with them that like just got erased, but it still goes on because we don't understand it because it's not. Well, I'm gonna tell you, as a black guy, and I'm Haitian too. I don't own this country. I have nothing in part of this country, so. Who knows what they were dealing with before something happened to them, and now we can even deal with it just because we're around, and we're just in a land where we have to respect. And for now, we can make it either or. We can make it something sacred, or we can make it something not so good, like Babylon. Like honestly, the way shit is going down here in America, I don't know what's gonna happen to it in the future. To be honest, it's not mentioned in the Bible, but I'm just saying. Bruh, there's a lot of wild stuff that probably happens and that we can never explain it, or they have explained it, but we just like fucked it over or something. But not even we necessarily, because I would say this: my people are on a different island, so and they have their own stories there too. I'm gonna start doing that, some Haitian stuff, some Haitian stories. Actually, I should do YouTube videos on that. On like just like he does on Wendigoon, I'm going some Haitian folklores or some Haitian mythologies and stuff. I'm probably going to that stuff because that's my people. I've been to that country plenty of times, and then when I say I hear stories, I don't think they're for no reason. I don't think they're just stories of like shit be happening in parts of the earth that we probably can't explain. And that is what it is, and probably never meant to explain. The shit that's probably happening at the bottom of the ocean that's so great, but we shouldn't even know. You don't care what an ant does in his daily life. So why should something at the bottom of the ocean cares what we do on land? So there you go.
Mountains. Stories of siren spirits that exist out in the woods
Jibberu.
that pull men
Jabori.
into them only to never be seen again. And stories of creatures that rise up in the night and make men vanish from their tents only to be found horribly mutilated several days later. And while it may not be some siren spirit or monster of the woods, whatever did it then is surely still doing it now. Things like that are easy for me to forget because I grew up in the forest. It's always been something that I viewed as a friend or something personal to me that I've never really found scary, at least, during the daytime. And since it's something I've always known, it's never been the unknown. And because of that, and since the unknown is where we derive most of our fear, it's never been something I've been afraid of. And because of that, it's easy for me to forget that there is this secret might and power that exists within the woods. Every single piece of it is alive. From the trees and the grass,
the bugs, the animals live it,
to even the air you breathe in, it feels electric.
And that's what people don't get. Earth is alive. Earth is alive. We can live in walls, we can be on our internet, whatever. This thing has been supporting us for millions of years, billions of years, who knows how long. To us relative. This thing is alive. Everything you're walking through lives and dies, and so do you. So what does that mean? Naturally, we go back to that state. So even if you're not found or whatever going on in the woods, you gotta respect it because that's just a natural order of things. Sometimes we're just not meant to understand why shit happens. So like cases of people going missing, God don't even know what they experienced before they just kicked the bucket. That is what it is. Like I don't think I ever want to be caught lacking in the woods, but this is what it is. I mean, stuff happens to animals in the woods. A lot of stuff come out the woods. We've seen Sasquatches and shit come out the woods.
It's as if every moment that you stand within nature, you are existing within a living creature.
That's a biome.
If you ever lose sight or respect of that, you may be the next victim.
Yep.
That's really what it boils down to, right? The fear of the unknown. That's why these stories terrify us and keep us up at night, because they seem to be so unexplainable. And as someone who's familiar with the mystique and the mystery of the forest, I never want to lose sight of why it's so alluring in the first place. And that's one of the reasons that I'm here right now. A few of you may be wondering why I've had a change of venue. And that's because I'm at the ocean.
I would say this: I'd rather get lost in the forest than get lost at sea. I'm more scared of being lost at the ocean. I went to an island on my cruise and we got on a boat and we kind of went far off the island where you could kind of you could still see the island. But when I actually hopped in the water, of course, with scuba gear and stuff like that, and I looked how deep the water was, I could still see the sea floor. But I'm like, damn, this is 30, 40 feet down. I'm at the surface looking down. I'm like, and there's fishes around me and stuff. So I'm like, I'm really out here. I can't imagine with no boat, no gear, even probably just animals that just swimming up around me and stuff. I mean, I'm in an ecosystem of my own, and I have to get myself out of the head of, oh well, I'm just here on a trip. Nah, nigga, you in the middle of the ocean. That's where you at. I'm having fun on the trip, but I paid $20 for it. But I realized once I dived in that water that this is just more than a trip. This is an experience. So if you never been in the woods or you never even dove into the ocean before, we were far off where you can dive in the ocean and look down and see fishes and sea life and stuff like that. That's how far I was off. I didn't trust it, but if anything caught my eyes, there was a boat right there. So, but yeah, the ocean is way scarier than the woods.
If you're familiar with my channel, you know I'm deathly terrified of the ocean and everything to do with it. So to make it even worse for myself, I came out here at night and I'm not doing well. The reason that I came out here is because for me, the woods and the mysteries of the woods and everything associated with them don't really mean anything. The tide is coming up to my legs, okay. Because again, I was raised in it. To me, it's perfectly normal. However, something I am terrified of is the nature I don't know. See, I was never raised near the beach. I only came to the beach on vacation. To me, the ocean was a boogeyman I never interacted with.
Hell no. It is, boy. Them sharks. Not even the sharks.
Interest me as much as it does. Because in spite of how afraid I am of it, and in spite of how terrifying of it, it exists regardless. And it's so interesting to me, the terrors and the fascination that I can pull out of it. And in a sense, the ocean and the woods are one. It's all part of nature. It's all part of this great big beast that we're all living in. And we can't really explain, or we can't really... I swear I heard something run up. Oh man. It's all part of something we can't wrap our heads around. And it exists in spite of how we feel about it. The reason I'm here is because as I go through this series and as I talk about Missing 411, I don't want to lose the terror or the majesty of these stories and why I feel they're so important. Because they're a blemish across our history of trying to figure out everything that we can't put together. And that blemish is nature itself. So if you're like me and the woods don't scare you, but this does, it's all part of the same
scares
beast.
me.
So
The woods and the ocean. I was never raised in the woods. I never raised in the ocean. I was raised on a third world country, yeah, but I don't trust the woods or the ocean.
Probably not.
I'm staying out.
Nervous right now. But if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you for watching. I am horrified right now. I think I'm actually here past curfew, and I'm not supposed to be here, and I keep hearing people walking around in the darkness, so I'm going to call this short. But I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you all so much for checking this out. Thank you so much to Aiden for being a part of the video. Aiden's a fantastic guy. As I mentioned, his channel will be in the description, along with the podcast him and I do together about weird biblical topics. So if you like my weird biblical stuff, be sure to check us out over there, and check out Aiden's channel regardless. He's a great guy, so we'll see how that goes.
So, yeah, that was it. That's mainly people going missing in the woods. Kind of seemed that was the forte. I mean, when I expect missing, because he could go, there's a series he's gonna start, so I can expect him to like, oh, people going missing on planes. Like they've been like whole ass planes going missing full of people, and God know where they're landing, or they'll find a crash site, but most of people are either dead or missing. Yeah, stuff like that happens, but. Yeah, that was it, man. That was a good ass. I don't know how long that was, but this was interesting. I hope he does more, because there are unexplained things that we can't explain, and we just gotta respect that some things on this earth or even in our universe, I believe we're just not meant to even know about. What it is or no. A cow doesn't grow up knowing about a slaughterhouse, but unfortunately, that's part of nature. I guess for us, it understands that it can live a full life, maybe, but doesn't know that, you're meat. At the end of the day, the full scope of it is that you can live your full life now, but you don't know what's out there that's literally like a meat grinder that would just end your life, whenever, anytime. Like, our existence on this earth doesn't guarantee, what we're doing right now probably don't amount to nothing. Who knows? Like, let's stop to say our sun is going supernova one. We can't do nothing about that. Like, the whole earth is engulfed in the fucking sun, or like a fucking meteor hit us again, which they do often hit Earth, meteorites, but not meteors, actual meteors. But yeah, that was it. It was pretty interesting. I'll probably do some more stuff on this. The boys on the track and stuff that I'll probably do that next. The next time I watch him on here. I mean, review what he's talking about. It's like 500,000 views and stuff. But yeah, Wendigoon good, bro. Like, he explains shit.